On today's show, Luka Dončić and Slovenia eliminated from EuroBasket, but we might be witnessing the beginnings of an MVP caliber season upcoming with the Lakers. Plus, Lauri Markkanen's stock on the rise and predicting EuroBasket medal finalists. It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And joining me is my partner in crime, host of Locked On Heat, David Ramil. David, are you ready for the Luka Dončić revenge tour season that we're about to witness?
I've been ready. We've been expecting the MVP caliber season for a while. He's always been one of those top five-ish type players, and could this finally be the year where he cracks it and becomes the best player in the league?
Could be. It certainly feels like that's what we're gearing up towards, and that's where we're going to start our conversation on today's episode. We're also going to get into a little bit of the specific EuroBasket performances, the quarterfinals rounds finishing up, teams advancing into the semifinals. Later on, we'll get into our predictions for who places as far as the medal finishers in EuroBasket. First, want to thank you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen each and every day, free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. And let's start right there, David. Just looking at this game, Slovenia eliminated by Germany, final score 99-91. And look, Germany has been one of the teams favored to ultimately place gold in the EuroBasket tournament. And especially after Serbia was eliminated there in the first round of 16, Germany became the overwhelming favorite to, be the team of destiny, so to speak, and push all the way towards the end. Luka was sensational in this game, as he has been through much of EuroBasket to this point. 39 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, just ultimately wasn't enough to get it done against a very stacked Germany squad that, again, has very strong chances to walk away as the gold medal finalists this year in EuroBasket. But let's throw it out to Locked On Lakers and hear what they had to say about this.
Kamenetsky, co-host of Locked On Lakers podcast, and the EuroBasket run for Luka Dončić and Slovenia comes to an end. 99-91 loss to Germany. Luka's 39 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists were ultimately not enough, but they're part of a 7-game EuroBasket run where Luka has averaged roughly 35 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, and 14 trips to the line. And it all feels like part of what has been an awesome buildup to the official beginning of what I've called the Luka era for the Lakers. We saw the summer shred, his revenge body, signing his extension the first morning it was possible, recruiting teammates like DeAndre Ayton and Marcus Smart. This all feels, again, like this potentially exciting buildup for the Lakers this coming season, and if nothing else, an era that Luka himself seems really psyched about. For more Lakers coverage, make sure you're watching Locked On Lakers on YouTube and listening wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, David. So obviously we've had the PR blitz. We've seen all the hype around Luka this offseason. And, it's always really difficult when you acquire a star, especially a star of Luka's caliber mid-season, because the team wasn't equipped to really allow him to be himself. They tried to make it work and they tried to, make a little bit of a push, but ultimately that Lakers roster had so many holes in it. They didn't have a serviceable big man, and they still are, they made the tweaks that they could in one offseason of an overhaul of a roster to try and find the right pieces to put around Luka and LeBron to be legitimate contenders this next season. What do you make of this, of just Luka's overall EuroBasket play, the tear that he's been on in these 7 games, how he looks? Like, do you think we're going to see potentially an even better version of Luka this next year, motivated by spite in the aftermath of this Mavericks trade?
It's kind of hard to determine because he's just been so good. Like I said earlier, like he's been a top 5 player for a long time now. And yet at the same time, now that he's got his team, and I think now we see him evolve into the proper engine that he's always been, with a team built to maximize what he does as that engine. I think it's going to be able to showcase him in a way that we've come we become used to seeing, at least during his Dallas stint. That was a team that had figured out, you know what, Luka is the primary core of our team moving forward, and we have to build the right group around him. Obviously, a trip to the NBA Finals kind of confirmed Luka's greatness, and now the Lakers are making the same adjustment. I've said for years, when you have a player that is such a singular talent, and you could say Luka Dončić is certainly among them, LeBron James, his teammate, another one of those players. Like a LeBron-led team has to go through a period of evolution. You have to understand as his teammate what that entails, because playing with LeBron, as good a facilitator, playmaker, and everything else that he is, still you have to have some kind of an adjustment. And it's not an easy one for players, especially veteran players, to make so deep into their careers. And I think we're seeing that with Luka as well. Like now all of a sudden this team is better suited to fit around him and understand what it takes so that they can be on the same page and maximize all of their collective talents with him at its core. So, I mean, are we going to see a better version of Luka? Can we see a better version of Luka? Like, I think we've already seen one of the best players in NBA history. Like, he's such a unique player in that sense. And I think he's always been one of the greats. And so I think it's just a matter of his team being good enough. Like, it just strikes me as funny. I think tonight's game was kind of indicative of that. The fact that he puts up such a monster stat line, and it's still not enough to put up those kind of points, and you still only wind up scoring 91 in a game. It just goes to show you it's not just so much what Luka can do. Luka is always capable of having these kind of great productive nights. It's just what his teammates can do to maximize his production and to be able to build on that and complement it at a good enough level. So I think we're going to see an MVP season from him, to be honest with you. I think I'm not sure what to expect from Nikola Jokic. Giannis is always the top candidate. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, obviously a great player in his own right, but it feels like this is going to be the Luka year to become the MVP in the NBA.
I agree with you on that last one. It certainly almost feels like things are shaping up for it to almost like the stars perfectly aligning for we know that the MVP award is very narrative driven at the end of the day. Absolutely. And this idea that the Lakers are now entering the Luka era officially, right, with a roster that's tailored to fit his strengths, to be able to support him, to have the right pieces around him. He's going to have the revenge tour season. He's going to want to prove the Mavericks wrong. He's coming in, arguably in the best shape that he's been in his NBA career since the early years of his NBA career. And yeah, you go through those other names, right? Obviously, these other guys are going to be candidates year in, year out. Jokic, SGA, you're not going to discount his ability to potentially repeat as the NBA's MVP this upcoming season, depending on how dominant the OKC Thunder are. But that's also a thing that you get into, right, with like voter fatigue and all these other kind of, extenuating circumstances or different factors that could be at play. The Bucks might be honestly a laughingstock in the Eastern Conference, which would completely remove Giannis from MVP consideration if the Bucks aren't even like a top 4, top 6 kind of team. It's going to be really hard to be in that conversation if you're that far down in the seedings, in a relatively weak Eastern Conference at the end of the day, with just how many holes that Bucks roster ultimately has. Right. I think for me with Luka, we know how great he can be. We know that he's one of the most singularly talented players in the NBA on the offensive side of the ball. I think he's still got to go through that same evolution that James Harden ultimately had to go through, and realizing that you can't ignore the other half of the game. You can't ignore defense. And James Harden was very much remember there was the Shaq'd in a fool, like highlight reel running wild for years of Harden as defense. And the problem was once that label gets attached to you, you're a lazy defender, you don't care about that side of the ball, it's really hard to shake that label. And this could be the thing, right? If Luka is actually in the best shape of his career, then there should be no excuse for him to be lazy or ignoring his responsibilities on that side of the ball, because ultimately it doesn't matter if you're dropping in 35, 10 and 10 on offense, and creating for guys and scoring in isolation and being this gigantic offensive behemoth, if you're giving up 40 on the other end. Like that's right. The kind of issue. And James Harden went through that evolution. It kind of feels like Luka is maybe about to go through it, or at least needs to go through it to really get to, if there is another level for him to get to that next level.
Did you see Harden improve defensively? Did you see him make a concerted effort as a longtime Rockets observer? Like, what was the difference in terms of how the narrative was, James is never going to be a capable defender. He's just not good. He doesn't care. A lot of Olay defense. And obviously there was some video to back that up, but I'm sure that wasn't fully indicative of his constant effort or what he was doing on a night-to-night basis. So did you see nights from him during his MVP campaign where he was at least doing something defensively to offset that narrative that had already been built into place? And can you see Luka take a similar step? Because I think he's not as bad a defender as he's kind of been labeled. And at the same time, he's just not going to be making those kind of impact defensive plays that are going to sway people who lean into that narrative so completely. So I don't know, because he's always been on the cusp. To me, I think Luka's MVP campaign, even more so than the defense, kind of hinges on team-wide success and how good this Lakers group can be. And so I was going to ask you, like, how good do the Lakers have to be in order for Luka to be considered the MVP of the NBA?
I think to answer I'll answer the first part first. Is just the Harden thing, right? It's not that he ever became like a defensive stopper, right?
Of course,
I think he leaned into certain strengths that he had defensively, which was he's always been one of the strongest guards in the NBA. So the Rockets really leaned into that, right? They allowed him to switch onto bigger, stronger players, and teams would be like, "Oh, we have an advantage with Harden in the post," and it's like, "No, you don't. Don't post up James Harden. That's a dumb move." And the 2017-2018 Rockets, the year that Harden won his MVP award, finally, he kind of proved a lot of people wrong in that capacity, but he also just tried a little bit harder. And that's the end of it. You just can't be such a net negative defensively to where you're in low light reels on that side of the floor constantly, like night in, night out. Yeah. And the argument is, players like a Harden or a Luka shoulder so much offensive responsibility. You're like, okay, they're conserving energy on defense. Sure. But at the same time, you factor in, again, the revamped physique, right? Best shape of his career. If you're in that great of shape, you shouldn't necessarily need to take, an entire side of the court off on a nightly basis. He just needs to be a place where he's not a complete net negative. And again, maybe leaning into some of his positional strengths on defense, right? He is a bigger, stronger player at 6'8". He's got good size. Let him guard in the post occasionally. Don't just let him sit out isolating on, on an island, on the perimeter, getting cooked by smaller, faster, twitchier guards, because that's where he's at his weakest defensively. So I expect the Lakers and JJ Redick to maybe scheme a little bit more to try and protect him defensively, to not leave him on that island. And to your question about just how good do the Lakers have to be, I think, general consensus would be like, they got to be at least a top 4 seed in the West, which seems really hard to do because the teams in the West are all so good. I know when we did our power rankings, right, we had the Lakers on the cusp of like that 5-6 slot in our power rankings of the Western Conference. So it's kind of hard to imagine, do they have enough firepower? Can Luka get the Lakers into that top 4 seed territory? I think if he is able to do that, if they're able to get there through some combination of Luka magic and LeBron emptying the clip and whatever he's got left here in year, whatever it is, 33 of his career. I don't know. I've lost track at this point. You're 20 something, right? If they're able to get the Lakers to a top 4 seed, and you don't see maybe like the same level of dominance out of the OKC Thunder, because maybe they're a little bit more, hey, we won our title. They take the foot off the gas pedal a little bit. There's probably still some voter fatigue with Jokic. The MVP award can also be nicknamed the Nikola Jokic award, just like back in the day with LeBron, right? Where you could award it to LeBron every single season and not be wrong about it. So it feels like, Jokic might be in the running in that capacity, but it just kind of feels like things might be lining up for it to be Luka's chance. And it's going to hinge on some of the team success, like you said. But it's not an unobtainable goal. And with the narrative shaping up the way that it feels like it is, it certainly feels like something that might be coming down the pipeline this NBA season. Coming up, we are going to be talking about another player whose stock is potentially on the rise here with his EuroBasket play. And that's one Lauri Markkanen of the Utah Jazz, Finland, advancing to the semifinals. They get past Georgia. We're going to break down that coming up here in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5 Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. Look, I'm personally not a huge golf guy. I'll dabble with some, putt golf or head out to, Top Golf on occasion, get some swings in. And it's always fun when I'm with my friends who do care about golf and I can, I hit a hole in one or something and then they're all frustrated because they just can't replicate it. Maybe there's some natural skill there, but Look, golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. This grape, ginger, lime flavor of 5-Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down the beverage cart. Now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. And continuing on here at Locked On NBA Game Night. As always, thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. For your next listen, go check out Locked On Lakers or go find the Locked On show for your favorite team. Let's get to our next EuroBasket game here where Finland advances past Georgia. Final score 93-79. And this was a game where Finland jumped out to an early lead, 28-15 after one. They never really relinquished the lead. Georgia made a couple pushes throughout the game, but nothing with any real, juice to it to really threaten Finland at the end of the day. And Lauri Markkanen has been on this awesome tear. Maybe not quite as good as Luka Dončić in EuroBasket, because those numbers are like video game, 2K create a player kind of numbers at the end of the day that Luka's putting up. But Lauri Markkanen has been, the focal point for this Finland team. He is their best player. He's been their best player on a nightly basis. And he's the biggest reason that they've advanced all the way here to this point to play Germany in the semifinals. And so, David, I feel like Lauri Markkanen is in such an interesting position with where he's at relative to his age, his NBA career, and I guess kind of just what his future prospects are. And so my first thing is just when you look at the success that Finland has had so far, and Lauri obviously being the best player on this team, maybe the conversation changes if they go up against Germany and they just get dusted and it doesn't look good. But if they go out there and maybe they topple Germany, right? Maybe they get into the gold medal game against one of Greece or Turkiye later on, right? Does this change maybe the perception on Lauri Markkanen? I don't know that anybody ever thinks that he's going to be the best player on a contending team, but he's a guy that's a legit star in the NBA. It just feels like he's kind of stuck in Utah in purgatory. And, there hasn't been a team that's been able to come by and kind of, rescue him and give him an opportunity to play in a high level, organization, a team that's actually trying to win some, play meaningful basketball games, basically.
Yeah, I can't see how EuroBasket really changes the perception all that much. I think he's been capable of these moments before. We've seen him even at the NBA level be able to do this. Certainly internationally, he's been able to do it as well. And we've talked about it before, just how different the international game is within the context of the EuroBasket tournament, that it's not necessarily reflective of what we see in the NBA. You're watching the emergence of an Alperen Sengun, obviously, and that potential had already been laid in the NBA with the Rockets, and now he's just achieved yet a whole other level with a Turkish team. I don't know. I feel like Markkanen's been there for a while already, so I don't know that this necessarily alters all that much in terms of what we think or what we know he's capable of. It is, though, however, just such an unfortunate side effect that he is as good as he is, and yet he's on this purposely bad team. The Jazz is just not going to be a very good team. I think most prognosticators have them as being dead last in the West, possibly dead last in the NBA. And it's just interesting because now you have this singularly good player in Markkanen, and yet you've traded away other players like John Collins. You've traded away Colin Sexton. What is this roster becoming? What is this roster supposed to be when you have a player like Markkanen who is capable of being as good as he's been over the last few seasons of the NBA career and what we've seen from him in EuroBasket? And so I don't know how much the narrative can possibly change, because he's going to be stuck on this team that's not expected to win. And it'll feel like empty calories. And I think we'll always kind of discount whatever production we see from Markkanen, because it's going to ultimately wind up being a loss anyway, because that's just how the Jazz are built as a team. So he's in a really tough spot. I honestly, I think he's been a good player for a long time now. I think everybody recognizes that. And he should have been traded some time ago. And I would be greatly surprised if he's not moved by the Jazz at some point this season. Because if you're purposely trying to lose, keeping a player like Markkanen is antithetical to that in the most distinct way possible. And so you have to be able to find a suitor so that you can lean into whatever this rebuilding stage is for the current Jazz iteration.
It's fine. I mean, at the end of the day, the payroll's got to go somewhere, right? And so Lauri Markkanen takes up this next season. He's making $46.3 million. The next highest paid player is Yusuf Nurkic, making $19 million. And then it's all single digits all the way down after that. So it's like that's how the Jazz payroll is constructed. So at the end of the day, right, I know that there were the reports and rumors about the Warriors' interest in trying to acquire Lauri Markkanen, and that ultimately never came to fruition. So maybe had they done that, then things would look a little bit different. But your point about the empty calories, right? And I think that's the issue that, being on the Utah Jazz for these past few seasons, even though we've seen the flashes from Markkanen, it's hard to put any stock in what he's doing at the NBA level because you're like, he's on a bad Jazz team. Somebody's got to take those shots. Somebody's got to do this. I do think that in the right context, Lauri Markkanen, while maybe not ever to be like, ever capable of being like the number one option on like a legitimate contending team, I think he'd be an absolutely incredible second or third option in the right circumstance. And that really, like, that's why he's to me, maybe quite possibly the most intriguing, like, available star right now because he's on a bad team. So clearly, like, he probably doesn't want to be there, right? And would like to be, have the ability to actually play high level winning championship basketball. And so to me, the question then becomes, what team would potentially be in a position to swoop in and try and make a play for Lauri Markkanen? You're nodding. Do you have a team in mind?
I do not. No, and that's an interesting question because at that salary and being that he is a second option, like, you have to have a primary engine in place, and you'd have to be able to seek that one player that you think could complement whatever that engine is, or whomever that engine is, and be able to, take a hit financially in terms of accepting or absorbing Lauri's salary there. So I'm trying to think of it even off the top of my head. I don't know that the team exists. Like, can
I lob you one that I'm very curious that I actually feel a little. I think there might be something there. The Atlanta Hawks.
Okay.
They're geared up. Obviously, look, they made the deals that they made this past offseason. They had a really strong offseason. I think that we, back when we were kind of recapping some of the offseason stuff, we both had them like top three-ish. They made some really good deals, some really shrewd transactions, really, taking advantage of the Pelicans at one point there on draft night. They've got this really well-constructed roster, a lot of the right pieces, some athletes, defenders, shooters, all around Trae Young. And then they added Porzingis, right? And Porzingis has the ability to, I think, elevate this Hawks team, health permitting, this upcoming season. But what better way to potentially replace? I know that, like, Markkanen and Porzingis aren't exactly a one-for-one swap because Porzingis, has a bit more size, does a few more things defensively that Markkanen is maybe not or I don't want to say not capable of, but maybe not as equipped to do as Porzingis as far as being a paint deterrent, rim deterrent, that kind of thing, a defensive presence more so. But to me, the idea of, like, they've got the expiring salary there potentially with Porzingis. They could package some things. They've got future draft assets. If they felt like they could make a push, and if they wanted to get Trae, like another legitimate second star, because we know that Jalen Johnson has that star level potential, or not even star level potential. He is like blossoming into an all-star caliber player. Just dealt with an unfortunate injury this past year. You get a lineup that features Trae and Dyson and Jalen Johnson and Zachary Risachet and Lauri Markkanen. I don't know if you can have Lauri Markkanen play your five full time. You might have to, I don't know how you would have to shake some things up there, but I find that to me is a very intriguing possible outcome for Lauri Markkanen.
Yeah, I could see it. It also feels like the positional fit might not necessarily maximize what he can do, and it would just be almost like a lateral move and perhaps even a step back. Like, I think Lauri's production is enough to offset anything else, and yet being that he would be out of position, I just don't know that it would necessarily put him in the same position where he could help that team yet take another level. And I think that's kind of where the Hawks are, is that they've been part of this Trae Young era of basketball. They need to get to that next level, and they need to surround him with the right players to do so. In many senses, look, Markkanen is a great fit. It's whether or not you have somebody who can fill the center position admirably enough where you can have Markkanen.
Well, you do have Onyeka Okongwu, like, so that it's more just about figuring out the fit between, like, Jalen Johnson, who's been your four, and, like, can you slide Jalen Johnson down to the three? Like, yes. Is that it? Or yes, like, I think do that. Works. Yeah, so Johnson at the three, Markkanen at the four, Okongwu at the five, like, and then you have Dyson and Trae. Like, that's an interesting lineup. You got some size, you got athleticism, you've got shooting, you've got playmaking ability. Like, I don't know, maybe I don't know if I'm cooking here or if I'm cooking something garbage, but, like, I kind of think that has some legs to it.
I know, I agree. I think there's potential there for that group to be really good, especially in an Eastern Conference that's wide open. So I mean, again, like I said earlier, I think Markkanen gets moved at some point. You typically see Western Conference teams deal somebody to the Eastern Conference. I would imagine that Atlanta would probably emerge as a very likely suitor, especially for a contract like Porzingis. If that's all it would take, I think that probably would get the deal done. I mean, I'm sure Atlanta would have to sweeten the deal in some regards, but I think to be able to assume a player like Markkanen, who's been so consistent, who's been much healthier than Porzingis has been throughout his career, and to be as complimentary a star to Trae Young's greatness, I think that would really work for Atlanta. So that's an interesting group there. Could the Knicks make a swing on it? Would it be worth it to explore that for, I don't know, say a Karl Anthony Towns type trade? Would that be a downgrade? Would Markkanen be a step down from Towns, considering what we've seen from Towns over the last couple of seasons in New York? I don't know. I'm just trying to think in terms of like teams that might need that extra boost to propel them from kind of that second tier into title contention status.
We want your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Where do you think would be the best landing spot for Lauri Markkanen if the Utah Jazz ultimately elect to trade him this upcoming season? Give us your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Coming up, we're going to get into the finalists in the EuroBasket tournament, who we think will ultimately walk away as medal finishers. We've got Alperen Sengun versus Giannis Antetokounmpo. We've got Franz Wagner and Dennis Schroeder taking on Lauri Markkanen, the finisher in Finland. It's going to be a fantastic finish to the tournament. We're going to talk about that here in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On NBA. All right, really quickly for those unfamiliar with the structure of EuroBasket, I know we've been talking about it pretty consistently here on Locked On NBA Game Night and our sister show on the same podcast feed, our Locked On NBA Daily as well. The way the system works is now that we're down to the semifinals, it's going to be Greece against Turkiye and then Germany against Finland. The two winners of these two games play each other in the final round to decide the gold medal and the silver medal finisher. And then the two losers of these next two games, both taking place this Friday, the two losers will compete to see who ultimately places for the bronze medal at the end of the day. So one of these four teams will walk away with nothing, unfortunately, when it's all said and done. And then the two winners, the worst you can place, if you're one of the two winners of these two semifinals games, the worst you can do is a silver medal at that point, which is pretty exciting stuff for these countries, especially Turkiye, who hasn't won a medal since like all the way in the early 2000s. So they've been starved for some EuroBasket success for a minute now. And they certainly kind of feel like maybe the team of destiny here in the tournament with just how dominant they've been, being led by Houston Rockets blossoming star center Alperen Sengun. And look, David, we're headed for another significant primetime matchup here between, we saw a heavyweight bout between Sengun and Jokic in the final game of group play between Turkiye and Serbia. And we're about to see another one between Alperen Sengun and Giannis Antetokounmpo here between Greece and Turkey. Let's go with this game first here. Just quick thoughts on this matchup between Sengun and Giannis, and maybe your expectations for who you think ultimately comes out on top.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup. I have to lean Turkey at this point. I think they've been, as you said, the team of destiny. They just continue to improve. Sengun is emerging as a star. He's been there. And it's not just him, it's the supporting team as well. And that's what we're kind of talking about when we make the comparison between the NBA game and what we've seen from EuroBasket. It's not just having a singular star. That certainly helps, but it didn't help Slovenia to have a player as great as Luka's been. Sengun is much more of a team player at this stage, and he's evolved into something akin to what we saw from Nikola Jokic as well. He's a great complementary player. He's not a complementary player. He's a great singular player that maximizes everybody on the floor with him. He's improved as a playmaker. He's been a staunch defender. He's just had a great tournament run. So I have a hard time picking against Turkey at this point in time. So that's where I'm leaning as far as that matchup is concerned. How about you? I imagine you'll probably go Sengun and Turkey.
I am, but at the same time, Greece has been really solid throughout the tournament. They have really solid supporting cast next to Giannis. They've got like 4 or 5 different guys all shooting above 40% from downtown. And when you've got Giannis, dominating, as the wrecking ball that he is on both sides of the floor, he's averaging the second most points per game in EuroBasket, currently just under 30 a night. It's going to be really hard for Turkey to try and contain him. There's a lot of different things that they might be able to throw out there. They might potentially, we could see Turkey change their starting lineup and insert Adem Bona, member of the Philadelphia 76ers, who's been a really key part of their tournament run up to this point. They might insert him into the starting lineup to try and, have that counter as far as the size, the physicality, the athleticism to try and slow Giannis down, or they might just go the more team-oriented side of things and just try to, build a wall and slow Giannis down that way. I think on the other side of the bracket, though, between Germany, Finland, as good as Finland has played up to this point, it feels like it's very much Germany's game to lose. They're I think, still the best team in the tournament left of the 4 remaining teams. They've had the best chemistry. They've had the most dominant offense. Franz is playing out of his mind. Dennis Schroeder's been playing well. It kind of feels like, Finland has probably met their match. They had a little bit of I guess, they had, I think I don't want to call it luck, but like it was a bit of a lucky draw in the first round against Serbia. Yes, they won 92-86. I'm not going to take anything away from them, but both Serbia and Turkiye looked really bad in their round 16 matches. Turkiye almost lost to Sweden in that round 16 match. The final score 85-79. They were able to just escape with enough to get the win. But Serbia was still exhausted from that matchup, that heavyweight bout with Turkiye. And so I think that Finland got a little lucky in that regard. And then Georgia, not really a team that I think was going to scare anybody in the tournament ultimately. So at least that's where I'm leaning. I think we're headed for a Germany-Turkiye gold medal match at least.
Agreed. And having said that, I'm looking forward to the Finland-Greece final because I just feel like we've been off the whole time after having predictions that Serbia would roll through this, they get eliminated. And so it's just, I don't know what to make of it. Like, it just feels like it's such an interesting tournament because it's been so much fun to just witness it and see, the teams create these incredible upsets and the national pride that's at stake. We all rally behind the Olympics here in the country, and yet this is equally as important. It's an opportunity for these teams, these countries, to be able to stand out. And you're seeing great performances from individual players, but just the way that they blend together as a team has been phenomenal to witness. And so I have no idea. Again, I'm leaning Germany, Turkey, because it's hard to kind of make an argument against them when they've both been so individually good. And yet I could see potential upsets along the way too. I mean, Greece certainly has a chance. Finland certainly has that kind of upset scent around them. So it'll be fun to watch exactly how it plays out. But yes, right now, Germany, Turkey seems likely.
At that point, we've both got Germany, Turkey in the final, the gold medal match, and then we've got Greece, Finland, as the possible lose. Again, we're just going to be completely wrong on this and look like idiots later. But with that being said, I'm gonna stake my claim here. I've been riding for them all tournament. Obviously, Alperen Sengun is a member of the Houston Rockets, and I am really looking forward to fulfilling my promise to my listeners, my Turkish listeners over at Locked On Rockets. I promise that if Turkiye wins gold, I'm planning to do the entire introduction of my show in Turkish. I've been picking up Turkish phrases. I've learned a handful of sayings. I can do part of my intro in Turkish at this point. And I promise that if they win gold, I will be doing the whole intro in Turkish. So at that point, I want to do that now. Like, we're so close. We're on the precipice of me being able to achieve that and do that for them. So I'm going to say Turkiye wins gold, Germany places silver, Greece wins bronze, and then Finland walks away with nothing at the end of the day. That's my prediction.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm going to stick with that same prediction too. But I mean, I'm more invested in it now just so I can hear that Turkish introduction. Like, way to put yourself on the line there. That is absolutely being devoted to your fan base there. So kudos to you for taking on that challenge.
Ne haber ve hoş geldiniz. That's what I've learned so far for part of the intro. So it's what's up and welcome. There we go. I'm working my way there. I've been told I've got the accent down. We'll see what ultimately happens. But we want your thoughts on your predictions. What's going to be the final lay of the land in EuroBasket? Who do you think walks away as the gold, silver, and bronze medal finishers this year in EuroBasket 2025? Let us know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. But as always, thanks so much for hanging out with us here at Locked On NBA. Until our next show, be on the lookout for our sister show right here on the same podcast feed or YouTube channel, Locked On NBA Daily. Till then, we'll catch you guys on our very next game night.